Now 4730 Crystal Springs Drive.
And good evening, everybody.
Merry-go-round. 2 males, no further description, adding striping to a black Cadillac
Welcome
corridor, possibly exchanging plates.
to the interview room.
2904.
They're playing my song.
Code 216-3196.
Tell me where you're from.
Units additional 211 in progress, 1818 Southwest Mullen Boulevard, 1818 Southwest
Happy
Mullen Boulevard.
Easter.
All units, 1507 is following a code 37 vehicle, 770 Regal 2-door. He is on the southbound Harbor Freeway from the Hollywood Freeway. It is a
Idaho,
Buick Regal,
Colorado,
7 Tom Zebra Paul has
Oregon,
all units, citizen report, Boston,
Utah, Alabama, UK, Florida,
Citizen report, Boston, needs help, 3742 West Martin Luther King Boulevard.
California. You got to do something with your governor out there. Oh my goodness. Maine, New Mexico, our friends up in Canada. Thank you for being here. Michigan is out there. Happy Passover for our Jewish friends. And happy holidays for those of you who may not be religious. Hopefully this has been an amazing day for you, as it has for me. I got a great friend here tonight. Man, oh man, are we going to have fun. You guys are in for a real treat. Sergeant John Lamb, homicide guy, hostage negotiator, and he's got a new book coming out. It's going to be, when's it going to hit the shelves, John?
It's looking like it'll be out next month. We're looking at probably early May.
Early May.
Waiting to fork out a couple of things. And hello, everybody. Thank you for having me here tonight, Chris.
Absolutely, John. And this is volume 3 in this series. It's called Bring Out Your Dead. And this is the first time anybody's been able to see the cover.
Yep, and that is me. Picture taken in 1986. Back when I had hair, and the hair was reddish brown.
And a mustache. Put a mask on, put you on the porch, and people would think you're the guy at Guthrie's house.
Yep. Yeah. So, but yeah, that is actually me. Hard to believe. My goodness, 40 years ago.
Yeah, you're a snazzy looking fella there, buddy. I love you. And John, tell everybody, how many books have you written now? That's like 9 or 10 now?
This will be my 10th. I'm at work on my 11th. And that one will be called Sun, Sand, and Sun, Surf, and Savagery. And I've got probably at this point another 3 that I want to write. So I'm basically committed for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, no, you're awesome, man. I tell you, I wish I had that talent, but always congratulations. I mean, but you've always been an amazing writer. I mean, it's, and by the way, tell everybody about when we did the trivia deal with you, me, and Danny. And we were just three young cops at that time, and they thought they could outsmart us.
There was a trivia contest run by the city of Oceanside, and it was for the entire city, which at that point had we had a population of, I don't know, 115,000 people. And they solicited teams from all over the city. So we had teams from our local community college, from the library, from the various community service groups, the fire department, the city hall. As I recall, that we probably began with 18 teams competing. And Chris and I and a dear friend of ours, Dan Ahrens, were our team for the police department, and nobody really thought that the dumb cops were going to be in any level of competition. And we ended up winning the competition on a question that, for those of you who have read Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books, the question was, what was the fourth book in the trilogy, the Hitchhiker trilogy? And it seems like it's a trick question, but in fact, that's how the author referred to it. And the answer was The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. And I knew that, and we were in final competition with the college professors, and they just shook their heads in bemusement that the dumb cops won the competition.
Yeah, we were all over the papers and everything. I think the head librarian, I think, was kind of blown away that.
Well, you got us through a very important round when you were able to name all four of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I remember that. All right, so yeah, and we got to get Danny Ahrens on here. We got to bring him up here.
Yes,
and talk some old stuff. But on a serious note, John and I thought it would be a good idea, and maybe Bob will join us. Gary's tied up with his family, as is other folks. So on this day of resurrection for the Savior, Jesus Christ, he is alive. He has conquered death. And so in this situation, we hope that you're having a blessed day with your families, and that even if you don't celebrate Easter, we also want you to feel that you're always welcome here, no matter what that is. Whatever your belief system is, we're very open-minded at this end. So that said, there is one of many empty chairs today. I don't know if you saw, Savannah, she put out another video at her church where she talked about the resurrection. There's a lot of empty chairs today around the world at the tables. And one of them is Charlie Kirk's. And so John and I are going to approach this tonight, not from a political angle in any way, shape, or form, but rather from a forensic angle. There is a recent report from Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms that came out, and of course, folks jumped on it, and it just went nuts about gun, bullet doesn't match gun, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to break this down as two homicide guys that have been there, done that. And we're going to talk about why an inconclusive bullet fragment doesn't overturn a strong casing match. And that's basically going to be the gist of what, how we're going to approach this. And as you guys know, whenever you come over here to the interview room and we're Always grateful to each and every one of you. We only ask one thing, that you hit the subscribe button, you hit the bell so you always get notified, and that you share this information with all your social media networks. That's it. And the rest is be classy in our chat, enjoy the conversation, but join in. Most definitely join in. So tonight's discussion, kind of a mini agenda here. We're going to give a quick recap of the ballistics issues in the Charlie Kirk case, and then how bullets get rifling marks. That's going to be, I think, something important for everybody to understand. How shell casings get what they call tool marks on them. And then we're going to show you direct comparisons and the strengths and the weaknesses between those things and reliability of those in a court of law. And what exactly are the implications for that and for the case? The ATF inconclusive plus case match plus DNA. What are going to be the key takeaways that not only the prosecution but the defense will utilize? So that's where we're headed tonight. That's where we are headed tonight. And for those of you that are new to the channel, I will tell you that the day this thing went down, Karen and I were nearby, and we headed up that way and got there like 2.5 hours, 3 hours after the shooting. Actually, I was at the sheriff's office. I interviewed the undersheriff who told me what had gone down in terms of Tyler Robinson and his family and everybody the day of and that evening. John, you remember that because we were
on the air.
We were on the air together. Yeah. And so what say you so far, John, about where do you think we should be headed here this evening?
Well, I think you've nailed it, and you've covered it in the order it needs to be addressed, which is, first of all, the near panic that some media outlets have jumped on this inconclusive result for a 30-06 or for matching it to the weapon. I won't jump ahead, but you, like me, I'm not particularly surprised that it was inconclusive. We've seen it in the past, a couple of homicide guys. So, when we get to that, if your folks watching are interested, we can even talk about our previous experiences. I mean, not burden them with a bunch of war stories, but offer examples of instances where it was an inconclusive result. It didn't mean that it wasn't fired from the gun. So yeah, I'm excited for you covering this.
Yeah, I mean, there's like some really high profile celebrities out there that are, they've just taken this thing. Everything is turned into, this craziness where, you've got 5 different CIA agencies taking him out. I mean, guns from behind him, guns to the side of him. But if you'll see in this particular picture, everybody, you see 3 red, looks like markers on the rooftop here at the bottom of this photograph. That's where the shooter was laying. And if you'll look straight ahead, that is the canopy where Charlie Kirk was sitting. So it's not a hard shot. John, what do you think?
I'm no expert with a long gun, and that was an easily achievable shot for me,
Yeah.
particularly with a weapon like that with a scope.
Exactly. And so, just a quick recap for everybody. Authorities linked a Mauser Model 98 rifle found nearby in a wooded area, and I'm going to show you where that is, to Robinson via DNA on the rifle, on the trigger, on the casings, on the unfired rounds, and other related items. Now, the optimal word here is DNA. DNA. They found one item, a snap on a sheath in Koberger's case. And on this one, they have at least the rifle, trigger, casings, unfired rounds, etc., and other items. Also, a fired shell casing that matched the rifle. And then they have witness surveillance evidence, alleged text and confessions, and writings on casings like "Hey, fascists," and "Suck on this," with Robinson's DNA on those shell casings. On March 27th, recently, the defense filed, the defense court filing cites an ATF summary report. The agency was, quote, unable to identify a, quote, bullet jacket fragment recovered from Kirk's autopsy to the rifle. That they called the results, the ATF did, quote, inconclusive, end quote. Now, this is what we're going to dive into tonight, because there's an important clarification here from many forensics experts around the world. Folks have to check their facts. Okay? You can't just go out there and say, yeah, I fired a rifle in the past. It's another magic bullet theory, and therefore I know more, okay, than the forensic science. Now, the easiest piece of this puzzle would be to do a laser trajectory recreation right where those three items are on the roof, and you put height, weight, all this other stuff of one Charlie Kirk in the seat. And if that laser lines right up, then you're in the ballpark. John, what do you think, thinking through that piece?
Well, I would hope that that sort of laser testing was completed during the initial investigation. It would occur to me that that would be vital at the time, just to establish his location, the angle of shot, and was it done, Chris?
I believe it was, yeah. And in fact, I'm going to show folks the crazy thing about this. Karen and I were headed out to see our son at school when this thing went down. I mean, I was literally like 2 hours away on the freeway when this thing happened. And we just basically jumped off the freeway and stopped. And next thing you know, I'm there interviewing people, and I have, interviews that I've never played. I mean, I will at some point when we get closer to the trial. That were actually in the crowd that saw the whole thing happen. So an important clarification here is the fact that it says inconclusive does not mean it's a definitive mismatch or exoneration. The fragment was damaged, likely from hitting bone on impact, which is common with a high velocity rifle round, which also prevents clear microscopic striation matching, like fingerprints on a bullet. No public report at this point has ruled out the rifle. They haven't ruled the rifle out. They're saying that a fragment from the bullet is inconclusive. Now, FBI has picked it up, and they're from ATF, which is standard operating procedures, and they're running additional tests, second comparatives. They're comparing these rounds again through a lead composition analysis. So just because the fragment's not there, they can weigh it, they can test it, and then they can also say, yes, it's consistent with the lead fragments or the lead residue on the rifle. So that's going to be coming as well. Defense is using this to request a delay in the May preliminary hearing to review additional evidence. Prosecutors have said other evidence strongly ties Robinson to the crime scene. The ballistics evidence does not negate it. And the media coverage in this thing and some headlines have sensationalized the did not match, while experts and ballistic professionals call it normal for fragmentation after a bullet strikes the body, and autopsies, it's common to get fragmented rounds out of a body. And that does not mean it's exculpatory evidence to Tyler Robinson. In fact, when you're at the ME's office, a lot of times the doc, if a round has fragmented, is using rods to show where those pieces went. Believe it or not, it's worse to be shot with a 22 than probably a 30-06. John, tell everybody why.
The 22 will tend to maintain its integrity and bounce off bones and strike a variety of locations, and then it'll fragment. And I was going to add something else regarding their initial statement that it was inconclusive regarding the fragments recovered from Charlie's body. And that is that they took the biggest fragment they could find, which if the bullet, and I have seen bullets that I've helped assistant MEs with, I'll glove up and get my own forceps, and we will pull out tiny pieces, tiny fragments of bullets when we do autopsies. So this is not exceptional news. This is not like something that Chris and I heard this news and I went, oh my goodness, they've got the wrong man. No, I would have been surprised if the bullet was intact. They fragment. The bullets are designed to do that.
That's why they call it a jacket over the round. And we're going to give you a Reader's Digest class on ballistics, and then we're going to measure it off into our experience. And this is not about the defense or the prosecution or who's right, who's wrong. I don't see the complication in this particular case. The prosecution was going to, in the prelim, is going to call Tyler's parents, a mother and a father, to testify against their son. They're also going to put Tyler's roommate / friend on the stand as well to testify against him. Hopefully he's not dressed up
As a
in his
furry.
outfit as a furry that day. Not that's a pun intended here on Easter. No bunnies. No bunnies. All right. So this gives you a clear shot of, no pun intended, to Charlie Kirk that day, right here, this picture. Now, let me show you some video that I took, and you can actually see the FBI up on top of the building. All right, here we go. Now, an interesting thing here, if you look in the upper left-hand sets of windows, okay, when I pan over, you're going to see movement right there. Those are the FBI guys up on the building. See them up there? This was shortly right after the shooting. I went right behind where this guy was, and you're going to see how it pans around. You're going to see the parking structure where they've got him on video coming down. You're going to see over to the right where the woods, where he dropped the rifle in that wooded area. Whoops. Let me go back. Sorry about that. Sometimes I hit the wrong button like that. The wooded area where he hid the rifle to come back. You see the FBI guys again up there. This is the area where he jumped off the back of the building. They have him on surveillance and video. You see the two cones there where the rifle hit the grass there. Then if we come around, that's the parking structure right there. You see the back of the wall. Look at the right. You can see where the rifle was put in this area here. Okay. So what does this all mean? Well, first of all, we're going to have to, again, keep the ballistics in context. Inconclusive, unable to identify on the autopsy bullet jacket fragment. The prosecutors, a positive match on a spent shell casing recovered at the scene. Other evidence, DNA on a rifle, trigger parts, fired casings, unfired rounds. And again, an important note, inconclusive does not mean does not match, especially with high velocity rounds after hitting bones, as we have talked about. So, John, let's talk a little bit about rifling and how do bullets get marked. You want to give them the Reader's Digest version?
I certainly will. Modern firearms, with the exception of replica muskets, all have rifling down the inside of the barrel. The rifling, when the round is fired, the rifling causes the projectile, the bullet, to begin spinning. And at that point, it comes out faster and it comes out on a straighter line. And as the bullet makes the path down the barrel, those lines, those grooves that are in the inside of the barrel, like any other tool marks, metal on metal, they leave they leave marks on the. And I'm just to clarify, I'm going to call it a projectile because people, they'll say the bullet, the whatever. In working homicide, we always referred to the discharged bullet as a projectile. It will leave marks on the projectile that ordinarily we've all seen the stuff on CSI where you line the striations up and you go, oh, it's a match. So that is how the marks get left on there. There may also be distinctive elements if the gun loads a certain way that leaves a mark or crimping on the projectile before it's fired. So they'll have done a series of test fires with that rifle to find out just in firing it whether anything else is caused that it leaves marks on the bullet.
Okay, so for our friends in some countries like the UK and Canada, I mean, there aren't very many guns, in those parts of the world, and even Australia. But for all of us to understand, if you look at the top diagram that I have here, what John just described, the groove and the land, you see the land is a higher point than the groove, okay? And rifling, those grooves are what they call spiral grooves. And the land are raised lands inside the barrel, meaning they're off of the barrel, meaning in the inside. If you look at the bottom left here, you see how a barrel looks, okay? Well, the purpose for that design is to create what they call spin stabilization. So as a bullet is fired, it's spinning, and these lands and these grooves are stabilizing the bullet as it's going up the barrel rapidly. So the bullet, can't do this thing going up a barrel, ding, 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 ding. Okay, the lands and the grooves are designed to stabilize a bullet. And if you look at the picture of the bullet there, you can clearly see one higher than the other indentation on that bullet. And those are what we call lands and grooves. Go ahead, John.
No, I was following, I was looking at the picture.
Okay. Yeah. And as the bullet is forced through under extreme pressure, the soft jacket picks up those characteristics. And that's what they call a jacket, i.e. the bullet. The copper part, and sometimes they even have additional covering over the bullet. And the reason for that is when it strikes something, it spreads out, it flattens out, it can fragment, and it's designed to create more problems at the other end upon impact. Okay. So class characteristics shared by same makes and models of weapons, number of lands, grooves, twist directions, rates, and widths. All of these characteristics can be tested under microscopic view, and the striations form barrel imperfections. So when the round leaves the barrel, it leaves these marks, and you can measure that under a microscope. You can see it. And ballistics experts see this all the time. And John and I have read many reports of opinions from ballistic experts, as well as seen hundreds of photographs like this, as well as seen, many, many rounds. But each weapon sometimes has a class characteristic to that weapon. And in this case, a Mauser Model 98 typically has 4 grooves and lands with a right-hand twist, and that is also common in bolt action rifles. So that means a bolt action rifle means you have to pull the bolt back, you have to put the round in, you have to lock it down, and when you pull the trigger, the round starts to turn to the right. Okay. Any comments on that? Any of that, John?
Well, just to answer a question I saw pop up, one of your viewers wanted to know if all bullets are jacketed, and no, they aren't. There are bullets called wad cutters, which are customarily sold. Customarily are 38 caliber for revolvers, and they are just flat lead. And then there are soft nose bullets that are just simply soft lead. And then there are bullets called semi-jacketed hollow points. And the semi-jacketed is as implied that it has part of a jacket, but the top of the bullet actually has a hole in the top of the bullet. That bullet is basically designed as an anti-personnel round. And we won't get into that, but just to answer your question, most of your rifle rounds, however, tend to be jacketed.
Yeah, and in this part of the conversation tonight, guys and gals, we're just going to go over right now the ballistics forensics, okay? Or, right now with what they have and what the ATF report puts out. So the next piece of this is what they call a bullet comparison process, okay? And how does that take place? John, you want to cover this slide as well?
If you know the name of the microscope they use.
Yeah, that's all right. Can you see it? I don't.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
And what they will do is they will do a test firing, perhaps multiple test firings, and they will compare what they collect from the test firing against the projectile that's been recovered from the crime scene or the victim's body. And as you can see from this picture, you can see an awful lot of lines that are going to line up. Now, are they going to line up perfectly? Well, the bullets have different levels of damage to them, so you may not see that, but I think anybody could look at this and say, this appears to have been fired from the same gun.
Yeah, and so if you look at that photograph in the middle, everybody, you can see what John's talking about. The round on the right could have been, let's say, the round recovered from a victim. The round on the left could have been the examiner's test bullet from a gun that was recovered. Okay. And so what they do is once we bag and tag the evidence, we send it to an evidence facility. And John, walk them through that because you've run one in the past. When you get evidence and it's a weapon.
When you get evidence and it's a weapon, and in fact, I'll offer an example that shows that inconclusive doesn't mean that it didn't come from the gun. You get the firearm and you may have, if you've recovered projectiles from the autopsy, and how that customarily happens is we attend the autopsy. As projectiles are recovered from the victim, they're handed to us, and we take them as evidence. And so we would carry those projectiles back to the police station. And if we came up with a gun, then we would draft up a lab request that would say, we're sending you the rifle or whatever gun, we're sending you expended projectiles, and ideally, If you have additional ammunition of the same sort, then you'd want to send that. If not, in advance, you are going to want to do your best to identify the manufacturer of the ammunition, because that is meaningful. You want the same ammunition. And so you send these all to a crime lab. When we worked in Oceanside, we sent it to the San Diego County Crime Lab. And then they would take the firearm and they would take the ammunition, and they have a special, either a tank or setup so that they can fire a sample round. And if you've watched CSI programs, you've probably seen this. And then that way they can recover the expended projectile, and it should be in pretty much pristine condition. And then you compare it with the known projectile that was recovered from the victim. And I always said it was the double microscope. I am certain that in fact, there is an appropriate name for it, but it didn't improve my life. I just say, yeah, look at it. And if it's a match, they would tell you, yes, this projectile came out of this gun. Now you want me to continue with how you can have a non?
Absolutely, John. Yeah, keep going.
Okay. Not a war story, but just to set the tone. Worked a murder, an execution, murder for hire in 1984. The weapon involved was a Smith & Wesson 357 Magnum revolver, which was recovered, and we also recovered the ammunition. One of the bullets fired was, it shattered. There was because they were using wad cutters. But we dug up a road. We moved 3 cubic yards of earth, and used a sieve and went through it. We spent hours and hours, but we recovered the projectile that had traveled through the victim. So we have what clearly is a .38 caliber bullet, but because it has gone through a human being and then into the ground 2 feet, when we sent it to the lab with the ammunition, all they could tell us was, yes, this projectile originated from a .38 caliber or 357 Magnum revolver, but we cannot say that it was fired from this specific gun because the projectile is too damaged. So that basically tells you with the lab. I've also had instances where they said, oh yeah, that came out of that gun. So.
Yes. And yes, the lab that we used was strictly law enforcement. It's not a contracted, it wasn't a contracted lab. And
they were great. They were magnificent.
Yeah, they were very good. Very, very good. And then does the lot the ammo came from come into consideration when forensic testing? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every round is, packed differently in terms of, even though it says, a certain amount of grains of, gunpowder, sometimes you can go back to the manufacturer and find out when that lot was made and what the scientific variations are. So yes, would different projectiles mark differently from the same gun? No. For example, Walmart no name brand versus the same name brand bullet. No, all of the rounds, it doesn't matter what type of ammo and you're firing through the weapon, you're matching that barrel to the recovered round. You're not matching the bullet. Go ahead.
Yeah, these are tool marks. And even if, let's just say that for the sake of argument, the lot of from Walmart or the generic brand ammunition, let's just say it creates a few feet less in velocity at time of ignition. it's not going to change the tool mark created by the rifling inside the barrel. The lands and grooves are going to leave the same marks on the projectile.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I don't know. And by the way, no, we don't know more than the
don't know more
ATF.
than
Those
ATF.
guys are amazing.
Yeah. So let's look at but to that point, let's look at what the bullet comparison process is. Again, the examiner fires a test bullet. Then they use comparison microscopes to align land groove impressions. And if you look at that photograph to the left, again, the one on the right could be the test fire. The one on the left could be from the victim's body. And what they're looking for is sufficient agreement, not 100% match in microscopic striations. You see all those lines going like this on both of these bullets? Those are microscopic striations. What they're trying to do is match up 4 fingers, 5 fingers, if they can get it, maybe more. Okay. But if they only, let's say the bullet on the left hit in somebody's body and it broke in different pieces, that's called fragmentation. It fragmented. The round broke apart. That's what happened when the round hit Charlie Kirk's bone. It fragmented. So, because it fragmented, they can't match 100% to the barrel, okay, of that gun that was fired. So what are the conclusions? What are the possible conclusions? They use very careful language. The first one, it's match, identification. It is a match. That's what you'll see on your report. The second one is it's an exclusion. There's no way that rifle fired that gun. Take it off the shelf, get another gun. That's not your thing. Okay. The next one is inconclusive. We don't have enough to positively give a match or an exclusion. It's just not there. Okay. We see some similarities. We don't see enough to put our hand up in court and say 100%. We see 70%. Now, a jury likes to hear 100, but ATF and the government says, well, that's okay because we don't really have to, we don't really have to worry about the ballistics because we have all this other stuff. Okay. All this other stuff. DNA on the rifle, the trigger, the casings, the unfired rounds, and all of the other related items, the text messages, etc. So the prosecution's willing to say, no problem. We'll keep moving. And then the last one is it's unsuitable. That would be the last conclusion that a ballistics lab would give you, meaning this thing is just tore up so much, we can't even tell if it's a bullet. Okay. And like John talked about earlier, if you ever got hit with a 22, they ricochet all inside of you. Okay. But the larger caliber rounds like this, a 30-06, they can fragment. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. Why bullet fragments often go inconclusive? Well, high velocity rounds like the 30-06 in a Mauser hit bones and that causes severe deformation, or they deform pretty rapidly. They start to fragment, and then the jacket separates. The copper around the bullet, the top of the bullet, starts to fall apart. Small or damaged fragments lack enough intact surface or clear striations, those marks that we just talked about. Okay, everybody still with me here? Okay, hopefully we're all picking this up. Okay. And it's common in an autopsy that the bullet does not prove the bullet didn't come from the gun. Meaning, excuse me, I didn't read that right. Common outcome in autopsy cases does not prove the bullet didn't come from the gun. The fact that they have a bullet, it came from some gun. And when you're in these autopsies, a lot of times the doctors will do what they call canoeing. And what that means is when a round hits bone and starts to fragment, it goes in all different types of places within the body and all the different organs. And so they take the body and they put it through an X-ray. And you can see where all these fragmented pieces are. And then during the autopsy, the doctors will start taking those pieces out of the different organs within the body. And the blood will settle within the chest cavity. And sometimes those fragments will be at the bottom of that blood area on the back, believe it or not. And I don't want to be too graphic, so I'm going to be careful here on Easter. But what the doctor will do is what they call canoeing. Meaning they literally takes a ladle and looks for that fragment and puts the blood in a measuring cup, because your body holds a certain amount of blood, and they want to measure how much blood was lost at the scene and how much blood potentially is still in the body. And then that will help them determine, how fast somebody can pass away. Okay. And when they find these different fragments, they'll separate them for you at the autopsy on a piece of white piece of paper, typically next to the doc, and the assistant will take those fragments with a pair of tweezers and they'll separate them out. Okay. And then your evidence folks will come over and lay a ruler by them, or the ME technician will also take their own photographs. So you have two sets of photographs going on here. And your CSI folks, our CSI folks, would photograph them right then and there at the autopsy on the table next to the doc. And they would also put a tag on it with a number, give it an evidence number. And that's what we call bag and tag. Then they take those fragments, they put it into the bag. All of it goes, sometimes they go into a little manila envelope, a brown manila envelope, and then those go into, a larger bag, but each one has its own envelope. All of those items then are sent off after they're put into your evidence facility. So the evidence person will take all of that back to their agency, log it into evidence so that the chain of custody is clear. And then they will go back and send them to the needed lab for ballistics test after the case agent knows that a round has been recovered. Thoughts, John?
Well, I just to cover for your viewers who are unacquainted with firearms, a thumbnail sketch of the history of the type of ammunition used.
Yes.
The 30-06 round was the primary military round for during World War II. In fact, up until the mid-1950s, it was the ammunition used for the M1 Garand rifle and the 30 caliber machine gun. So this is an ammunition that began its existence, or a goodly portion of its existence was in military application. And it isn't until the mid 1950s when it's still 30 caliber, and that's arcane, but I mean, this round is designed to eliminate people. So that's what we're talking about. High-powered round that the U.S. Army and Marines used both in the Second World War and Korea.
Yeah, and that's important to understand. And unfortunately, it's going to be a drawback to the defense because allegedly the rifle came from Tyler's grandfather. And that's why he tried to hide it, according to the testimony, or at least the affidavit. And he wanted to go back and get that rifle because it belonged to his grandfather. It was given to him as a gift, as a hunting rifle. And so after the shooting, that's why he went back to the university after he went up and put it into the wooded area there.
Because if he purchased the firearm after the 1968 Omnibus Firearms Act, when you purchase a firearm, you register the weapon when you purchase it. If you purchase it from a retailer, and it goes into the ATF database. And for 8 years, I ran these guns whenever they came in. When I worked for a police department here in Virginia, so you would get a gun in and you would run it, and ordinarily the turnaround time can be 36 hours, 48 hours. But if you click on the button that says immediate, you'll get an immediate response. So had they recovered the firearm and run the serial number, they would have identified his grandfather as the purchaser.
Yeah, and the ATF probably has that, right? I mean, would you think that, John?
Yes, I am certain that having run there's called ATF traces, and I probably run, I don't know, 500-600 of them, maybe more. And so that would be a sensible reason why Robinson would have wanted to get the rifle, because he would have naturally presumed that they were going to be able to trace it back to his grandfather.
Yeah. Great point. Okay, so the next piece of this is well, first of all, let me ask you, John, here's a question. I'd like to know how popular the rifle and projectile type is. I think it would really shut down those theories. Yeah, I mean, it's a very popular rifle.
Yeah, good, excellent question. I don't know if your first name is Autumn, but the 30-06 in all its various iterations is an enormously popular firearm. The 30-06 round is exceptionally effective. It's used in hunting. It's used in target shooting. A lot of people like to shoot the M1 Garand rifle, which was the primary rifle used by American forces during World War II, just simply because it's fun to shoot. So it's an enormously popular rifle and round.
Yes, and thank you, Sherlocky, for that kind words. Okay, so the next piece of this then that we need to understand is what will what we call shell casing forensics, the quote pressed in marks. Now, at the back of the front side, I'm going to use a pen. Think of it this way. The front side of a pen where the tip comes out, this will be the bullet. Okay. So when there's a firing pin, it hits the press button here on the pen. Boom, that discharges some gas and powder and it ignites and boom, that explodes. And when that explodes, the bullet leaves the gun. But it
when
leaves
the firing pin strikes the primer.
right. And okay, so that leaves the shell casing, the casing in the gun, unless it's an automatic, and then we'll talk about that later. But just for this demonstration, the rifle, okay, it's still in the rifle. Okay. And now that bullet has left. It's gone and it hits whatever it hits. And this is the part that now disintegrates or fragments, and all of this is what they tested out here in Charlie Kirk. They didn't test this in Charlie Kirk. This is left in the gun where the gun was fired. And in this case, okay, they ended up getting the other side of this. Okay. Now, here's what we want you guys to stay with us here for a minute in terms of our thought process and where you guys are at. Okay, a casing, which is the leftover part, when the firing pin hits the primer, it is, and the bullet leaves, you have to pull the barrel back or the bolt back, excuse me, and that will kick that casing out of the weapon. Okay. Now, when they talk about a semi-automatic or automatic weapon, a semi-automatic weapon is when you pull the trigger once, okay, it'll eject one of those casings.
Automatically.
But it's not an automatic pistol or rifle. It's just the gun is designed to automatically do that, like a conveyor belt. Okay. Now, when we talk about an automatic weapon, you can just hold the trigger down, and it will boom, boom, like start shooting chocolate candy out like Lucy and the conveyor belt. Okay. Trying to get the conveyor belt to stop, and she's just popping them in her mouth. That is an automatic weapon. Okay. Most weapons in the United States are semi-automatic weapons. They're not the kind you can just hold down and shoot rounds out of. Now, there are weapons like that, and guns, semi-automatic weapons, can be modified or tampered with to make it that way. Okay. But in this case, the interesting thing is the bolt rifle only holds one bullet at a time. One bullet at a time. So when somebody pulls the trigger, there's a pin, and you'll see the top photograph here to the right, that there's a pin that pops out real fast and strikes the back of that shell casing. And John, tell them the science behind that.
Well, and we're covering this in detail because the presumption, I know we have people that know firearms here, but there are an awful lot of people that don't know firearms here. They don't understand how ammunition works. So I want to request the patience of people who are going, yeah, I know all that, but there are a lot of people that don't. The way a bullet a cartridge, which is technically what it's called, is composed, is the metal portion that we call the cartridge contains gunpowder. And at the base of most, I won't even get into rimfire. We'll just talk about your standard rifle round, like a 30-06. There will be a tiny cap at the base of the cartridge, and it's like a cap. It contains explosive mercury fulminate, I believe. And the way that the bullet is ignited is when the firing pin strikes that primer. And the primer ignites, which then the spark goes into the cartridge and ignites the gunpowder and sends the projectile on its way. And that firing pin for a gun will leave a unique tool mark as far as where it strikes the primer, how it strikes, the depth, whether there are any flaws in the firing pin. So it is a unique tool mark.
Exactly. And so to answer this question from Rosebud, would the bullet leave marks on the casing, and can they match those marks left by the bullet? No, the bullet will not leave a mark on the casing.
Because it's gone.
It's gone. Okay, it left, right? Think of the pen. It left the pen. But now the casing, what you're talking about, there are marks on that casing that you can match now to the gun that fired that bullet. And in this case, it's a rifle. Okay. So the casing is forced backwards real fast because of the pressure as it slams into internal gun parts. Okay. So when the person takes the bolt and they push the bullet in and they slam it down, the moment they fire, that casing starts to move backwards real fast and the pin starts to move forward. So it's like this, boom, like that. But it happens like in a nanosecond. Okay. And those leave what we call key marks, impressions that are not just scratches. Firing pin impressions on what John just talked about, the primer. The upper left-hand corner in the top, you see an example of that on the the casing. Okay. Why is that important? Because they can match these. They can match them to the weapon that fired that round.
And it's a one-to-one unique comparison.
Okay. Everybody tracking us here? So if you look at the picture with the yellow circle and the arrow on the right, that's the pin. They call it the firing pin. The one on the left is the impression left by that firing pin on the casing, on the primer, which is, it hit it and boom, that caused an explosion. Now, breech face marks on the base. Now, whenever a rifle round or a pistol round is kicked out of the gun, okay, so let's say you pulled the bolt back, that kicks, there's a device in there, it's a little like pin looking thing, it kicks the round out, okay, and then you can load another round in. If you wanted to do it again, you can do that pretty rapidly. And in World War II, that's what they used to do. You see in the war movies where they go click, 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 like that, boom. Boom.
That was the German, well, it wasn't that model of rifle, but the German army employed Mauser bolt-action rifles.
Yeah.
The Garand was semi-automatic, but every time the round is ejected, that creates a fresh set of tool marks on the brass that's being expended.
Yeah, if you ever see the movie Saving Private Ryan, you'll see a lot of these rifles. Very similar rifles, like John's talking about. Okay, well, those, what we call extractor and ejector marks on the bottom, you see these on the bottom, okay? You can match those up under a microscope, to answer somebody's question here a minute ago. So they're, by the way, they're often clearer and more durable than bullet marks, or, trying to match up bullet fragmentations, trying to put the bullet back together to recreate it. It's harder to do that than it is to work with the shell casing. So the challenge here for potentially a suspect is if the suspect left similar bullets and shell casings behind, just because it's fragmented does not mean it's not they're going to be able to weigh it and say, well, it's the same weight as all of these others that were left behind, or it's the same type that was left behind. Everybody tracking us here? So that's what we call breech face defect, i.e. extractor marks on the shell casings. And they can be matched 1-to-1. If you notice the picture on the bottom right, that is 1-to-1. And the picture on the left, same. Okay. So let's go to that comparison aspect, the casing aspect, what we're just talking about. Remember, they not only test the bullet into a water source and then they collect it, but they also test the shell casing to see if the shell casing has the same marks made from the weapon that may have been submitted for testing. And so they test fire the gun again, and then they compare it under the microscope. They look for the firing pin shape, the depth, what they call breech face texture, the extractor and ejector positions on the shell casing. So again, when we talk about inconclusive of a fragmented round, think of a surgeon who is operating on the entire body, and they're able to get that person to the hospital, and the surgeon says, well, he's missing his foot. Okay, but we have the rest of the body. We need to work on that. And that's how the prosecution is looking at this. Okay, well, we don't have enough to say he had a foot, but we have the rest of the body. And that's where multiple independent mark areas make identification stronger when it's present. And they do that, again, a visual side-by-side firing pin or breech face comparisons. And that's where we can see the photographs on the left. Okay. John, you want to say anything about any of that so far?
The only thing that maybe the analogy, and if I'm flogging a dead horse, let me know, is that what we're trying to draw the inconclusive is my darling wife was a fingerprint expert, and she would get a partial fingerprint and she would compare it to a known fingerprint. But if they didn't have enough of the fingerprint, she wouldn't eliminate it and say, no, this is not the guy. What she'd say is, this is inconclusive. And this is similar to that. There's just not enough of the fragment available to absolutely say so.
Yeah, and also that's a great point. And also, if they didn't have, let's say, the ammo, they would go and get ammo, and they would measure, or they would do these, this microscopic comparison with that new ammo that they have. Go ahead, Joe.
And I'll tell you something interesting about that. Just not that
Yeah,
it's going to
please.
affect anybody's lives. But when I ran our evidence room, we dealt with a Commonwealth crime lab in Virginia. And whenever we received a box of ammunition seized and the case was adjudicated and we could do what we wanted with it, which usually dispose it, I would call the crime lab. I'd call their forensics unit, the firearms unit, and I'd say, hey, you know what? I've got a box of 32 caliber whatever. And if they didn't have it on their shelves, they'd say, send it down next time you bring evidence, because they maintain a huge physical library, inventory of ammunition from literally all over the world that they could use to test stuff. So even if they couldn't find it, they might be able to find it on their own shelf. Most labs do that.
Yeah, and if you look at, again, if we look at the verbiage here, inconclusive, they're not, they're saying, the prosecution is saying, we don't need that. That's what the prosecution is saying in this report. Okay, that ATF has put out. All right. And because again, if you're just joining us, they're saying, well, we don't need that because we've got his DNA on the trigger. We've got his DNA on the gun. And they just go down this whole list. The only reason this is an issue is because the defense is using it as a motion for more time. They want more time. Okay. And if you really think through this a little bit further now, the young man's going to have his parents coming into a courtroom and unfortunately having to testify. Now, all the conspiracy theories and the second guns and all this, the exploding microphones and all this other stuff, okay? What happens if dad says, he told me he did it? It's kind of like the Koberger stuff where, when Brian said, or the defense said, he didn't do it, we guarantee you. And then all of a sudden, Koberger says, well, yeah, I did. And I'm going to plead guilty. Okay. It just, if you look at this picture right here in front of us, this is a really good photograph of comparing two shell casings. One is a test fire and one from a crime scene. And if you look at those three lines towards the bottom and you try to look for those on the one on the right, that's very strong evidence. The visual side by side. And that's what they call a breech face comparison. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. All right. So bullet versus casing. Side by side comparisons. I got three categories here. What's the aspect, a bullet, rifling marks, and the shell casing tool marks. The aspect, how marks are formed. A bullet. Bullet forced through the barrel creates striations. On a shell casing, casing slam backwards, leaving impression marks. Remember, the bullet leaves the gun. So we got two things here. We got three categories. One, the first one, how's it happen? The bullet leaves the gun. That's column number 2. Column number 3, the shell casing is left behind. Okay. Both of these can be evidence against that gun. And it can be argued. So just because you only have one column, it doesn't mean you can't argue the second column, shell casing. So in this case, they'll probably argue the shell casing because they are going to say, and they've already said it, the prosecution's already said it, well, we don't even need the bullet because we have the shell casing. So now, what are those main marks that they would argue? Again, lands and grooves. And they'll bring in an expert from ATF who will say, yes, I looked at all these things. And what did you discover? Well, I discovered under the microscope striations. Some matched, some didn't. And then what was your opinion? Well, they were inconclusive. I didn't have enough. They were destroyed, etc. Okay, but you had the shell casing. Yes. And what were you able to do there? Well, I could match the firing pin. I could match, on a breech face, examination, I could match the extractor. I could match the ejector. Oh, so you can match 4 of those items. Yes, I did. All right. And that's how it's going to go in trial. Okay. It's not going to be Candace Owens, saying, all this craziness out there. And then the next one will be, okay, well, what's the vulnerability to the prosecution? Well, it's fragments, or bullets fragment and they deform on bones and impact. So that's kind of a problem. Right, John?
Yep. I've seen it in multiple homicides. It's hardly a surprising report that a bullet did that.
Yeah. But the lower probability, though, is a shell casing stays protected inside the gun during the firing. So that will be the argument. Common result when damaged, inconclusive. Frequent, that is a very frequent determination in using rifles. I had a case one time where a guy had an AR-15 and he was like 10 feet away and he shot the guy. The round hit right here and it went right around. It didn't even fragment, nothing. It went under the cranium, the subdural, and popped out of the back of his head. The guy's cranium, his head was so hard, the round didn't even penetrate.
And the AR round is relatively light.
Which is, I saw in here, well, rifles, rifle rounds don't, fragment. Well, yeah, they do. Okay. All the time. And so in this case, the shell casing again becomes more identification and exclusion, more reliable. It becomes better reliable evidence. So what is the reliability of a bullet? Excellent when intact, but limited when they fragment. But here's what the prosecution's going to pull out of their hat. Stronger corroboration plus good DNA adhesion, i.e., they're going to connect it to that rifle. The DNA is going to be connected to that gun. And they've already done it. They've already done it. And then they're only going to put on 3 witnesses. The kid's parents, and they're going to tell the story of how their son turned himself in after talking to his dad. And remember, the father asked a question. I can't imagine what these parents are going through, by the way, to get that phone call. Tyler, where are you? Can you imagine that conversation? And so let's look at real world and reliability studies. I saw somebody in there that was interested in 30-06 statistics, et cetera. Well, there are tens of thousands, if not millions, of studies that have been done. It's called World War II. It's called World War II. Bullets do crazy things in all due respect. And rule number one in homicide is you never tell the doctor that looks like a 22 or a 45 or a 30-06 or a 357
From the outside.
or a 44 caliber, because that doc's going to look at you real fast and go, why don't you go wait in the lobby? Because the skin is so elastic, okay? The skin collapses sometimes, or it expands, or it collapses, or it expands. You just don't know what it's going to do. And bullets are the exact same thing. You don't know what they're going to do. And the interesting thing about that is, reliable studies such as World War II, there are hundreds of thousands of injured veterans from World War II who were shot with a 30-06 from a German Mauser. There are hundreds of thousands of U.S. soldiers on the beaches of Normandy who were shot with a Mauser 30-06 and machine guns. To think that we know more in today's available informational age, you got to step back for a moment and don't drink the Kool-Aid. It could be as simple as a confused kid who can't figure out what direction he's headed in life with a best friend who's dressing up like an Easter bunny. Okay. And he's confused and he borrows his grandfather's gun from his house because it was a gift. And he goes to the university and he gets on the roof and they have him on video. And for all we know, the evidence is going to show that all of that DNA, all of where he parked, I've heard on the, various places that, he did this. There was no way he could have walked with the rifle. Oh yeah. I know where he parked. Trust me. It was like 8 blocks away. And he walked right down there, unfortunately. And then he went back, even made contact with the cops. So real world and reliability and studies, both methods have very low error rates that we just went over. In fact, it's a 1% false positive. When examiners reach a conclusive decision, and these are large black box studies with thousands of comparisons, inconclusives reflect evidence quality, not method failure. So it's the collapse of the evidence once it's fired from the gun, not how they did the testing or compared it to come up with inconclusive. So in the Kirk case, inconclusive bullet fragments would be expected.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plus,
and Chris, can I add something to all of our internet experts who claim the bullet couldn't do this, the bullet couldn't do that? We've seen literally hundreds of people shot, okay? So I don't have to speculate on what a bullet won't or could do or might not do, because I go in with no preconceived notions, because bullets do strange things, and they can be influenced by everything, from the angle, the density, and I won't get into like deep detail, but the density of the flesh. Muscles will have a different impact than softer flesh. Bones will have a different effect. So all of the people that get on and go, well, the bullet couldn't have done that, respectfully, and I'm not trying to be snarky, I would just ask, how many shooting victims have you seen? Okay. And I will put your number up against what we've seen.
Well, and even taking us out of the equation, every autopsy, why they even do one if they've seen it all?
Yeah.
And they know exactly what the bullet was going to do. Then for now on, there is no need ever for the medical examiner's office. Okay. You never have to go and do an autopsy again, because
We know what the bullet's going to do.
Everybody knows what it did. Okay. And the doc's just going to sign the report and said, well, I already know that, so I'm not even going to do anything here. Okay. There's no need for it, which we all know is ludicrous, right? As Rick Moranis would say in Spaceball, ludicrous speed. Smoke them if you got them. We operate in real world, scenarios, not ludicrous speed. All right. So what are the implications for the Charlie Kirk case? The defense is going to highlight the inconclusive bullet to request a delay, which they've done. And that's where some folks in the chat are on the defense side. The prosecution, casings match DNA, provide independent, strong links. That's going to be some folks in the chat on the prosecution side. Inconclusive on a damaged jacket is a known forensic limitation, not an exoneration for the jury. In fact, they will probably be read a jury instruction with some type of that language. The attorneys will get to decide. The fact that these attorneys were arguing over the entire district attorney's office be kicked off of this case because one of the DAs had a daughter at this event, this judge is going to have to get it together, tighten it up, because they wasted a lot of time. And this, again, is another waste of time. And so this court's going to have to really pull it together. However, the ongoing FBI test may provide more clarity as additional testing is completed. What's the lesson? Ballistics is rarely one smoking gun. It's the full picture that matters. The entire picture. That's what a jury will decide based on the evidence that's presented to them during a court trial. At this point, Tyler Robinson is presumed innocent until proven guilty, but there was enough probable cause to arrest him beyond a reasonable doubt as the perpetrator in this case. Okay? As the perpetrator in this case. So what are the takeaways? John, did you want to say anything about that last slide?
No, I can't add anything to that.
Bullets rely on fragile rifle striations. Casings rely on robust, impressed tool marks. There are two different problems here. The defense is only pointing out one of the two problems. The second problem can still be presented to a jury. Damaged bullet fragments commonly yield inconclusive. This is normal. It is not suspicious. It is very normal. And I wish Candace, whatever her name is, would, I know her name, I don't want to say her last name. I wish she'd get her head out of the clouds. Because it's going to look really bad if a jury hammers him. A strong casing match plus DNA can stand independently of any fragmented bullet. There are more problems here in River City. Real problems with River City here. Media headlines saying did not match often oversimplify inconclusive. Forensic science works best when all the evidence is considered together. And I think everybody knows that common sense plays a major role here when, unfortunately, the father of this young man and the mother of this young man is going to be put into a no-win situation to testify against their son. What are your thoughts, John?
Well, I'll be fascinated to see what happens after the preliminary examination. Hopefully, the court will deny the motion to delay the case, because merely stating that there was an inconclusive result from the analysis of the projectile, I don't understand how that measurably alters their defense. But if you're attempting to just extend the case, I mean, and we've seen that. But I'll go back on another point, just so that to basically reaffirm what you said, Chris. I was worked a homicide where a victim was shot 15 times with an AR-15.
I'll say her name and insult her. How'd that make you feel better? Candace Owen, she's lost her marbles. There you go. There, now you get both. I hope you feel better.
And of the 15 projectiles that we recovered, because I've also seen people saying, well, why didn't it go through and through? Well, this guy was shot at close range with an AR-15. Not one of the projectiles went through and through, and they were all fragmented, 15 rounds. So this is not, I mean, I look at this and go, I'd be more surprised if you told me that you'd come away with a pristine projectile recovered from Mr. Kirk's body. We expect this, particularly with a rifle. So I don't understand why people think it's a big deal, but then again, and I'm going to try and be kind, a lot of folks don't have our background. So, and they could be misled by people who apparently claim to have extreme knowledge, but don't. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and Fake Monkey, no, it's not a crime to ask questions. It's a crime to ask stupid questions. So don't be stupid, like Candace Owens. That's all we're saying. Finish your thought, John. I love this channel.
Oh,
I love the channel, and every once in a while, you know, you get the You get the trolls coming. I love to dance sometimes. Have you ever noticed that?
I do not understand in social media, and I've got to confess, and I'm going to go into a little cul-de-sac here, how people can become so wedded to social media presenters that, and it's across the spectrum, that they embrace their cause.
Yeah.
I just don't understand it. But then again, I'm old. I sit on my porch and yell at kids to get off my lawn. So I just don't understand that. To me, the facts on this are pretty straightforward. And I'll say one other thing regarding, I've read the conspiracy. Oh, they planted the DNA. For a conspiracy to work, these conspirators, for whatever reason, needed first to obtain a rifle owned by the suspect's grandfather, and then use that rifle and then somehow cajole the patsy, or however they want to describe him, to go to the event, and then somehow got his DNA on the rifle, and then somehow planted the rifle. And I'm sorry, there are too many moving parts here. I'm a big fan of Occam's razor. I'm not a naif. I realize that conspiracies do occur, but I'm not seeing it here. Now, give me more information. I'm willing to change my mind. But based on what I'm seeing here, the physical evidence and what we know of the timeline, I just don't see it. And if somebody is offended by that, I'm sorry, but I just don't see it with my experience working homicide.
Yeah. I mean, how many rabbit holes have we gone down where you get that phone call, right? And maybe that's why we're just kind of right to the point sometimes. I mean, with, it's not against the law to be stupid. And we've dealt with that for 40 plus years each. I mean, between the two of us, there's over 80 years of experience here. How many homicides did Candace investigate? I forget. I'll wait for the answer. And so it's like, okay, if you're going to go out there and, throw this poor guy's life in the drain, well, you're entitled to do that, but at least wait till the jury does it. Let the jury do it.
And I wouldn't be enormously surprised if there isn't a plea on this.
Yeah.
You take the death penalty off the table. If you prevail upon him that really you're going to put your mother in, let me put the caveat, innocent until proven guilty. Okay.
Absolutely.
However, I would be very comfortable knowing what I'm knowing, that suspecting that this is the right person. And Barb, I'm looking for a place to move. Okay, because I'm leaving Virginia, but I'm going someplace where there is no snow. So I'm sorry. I'm afraid Canada's kind of out of the running, but it's a beautiful country. And by the way, my mother was Canadian. So
That's awesome.
But just going back to that thought, and I completely lost my train of thought. So take over, Chris.
Well, you've got, this is your upcoming book. It's not out yet, but everybody, we're kind of priming it for when John does get it up on Amazon. We're going to drive it to #1 before it even hits the marketplace. But you don't even have it up yet, so they can't pre-order it yet.
No, they can't pre-order it yet. And I'll tell them, you want me to just briefly share some of the cases I cover in here?
Absolutely, go.
Murder for a murder for hire, where I did all the scut work because I was the junior detective. A couple of very vicious stabbings. A serial SA, who I did a primitive. By the way, JBZ, I lived in Palm Springs, well, Palm Desert, and I was a deputy out there. where I did really a very primitive psychological profile, and we caught him. And so it's across the spectrum. It's more of a true crime book talking about various homicides I worked, and that just covers the first 2.5 years I worked in homicide. So I'll let everybody know when it's available. And and thank you for putting it up there, Chris. And yeah, somebody said, no, that couldn't be me because they looked at the picture carefully.
That's him.
That's with a passage of 40 years, darling. So yes, that is me. I wish I still look like that.
You look rather dapper there.
Well, we detectives back then wore shirts and ties and sports jackets. And I wore the hat because so I'll ask JBZ18, if you work for Palm Springs, you may have known Sergeant Tommy Beckert, who I worked with as a deputy back in the, my goodness, back in 1981.
Dapper John.
So, great guy. So yeah, I wore a hat because I burned, if you look up the definition of albino in the on Wikipedia, you'll find a picture of me. But just returning to the issue of this, and I forgive me, I let it into the area of conspiracy.
Don't worry about it.
I just don't see it. But if fresh facts came up, I would be willing to reassess my opinion. This is the one thing about real homicide guys, is that we are willing to change our opinion on an event if you show us facts. So, well, if I will tell you, The Last of Us, if you want, I can put on before we leave my current hat.
Go.
I will be back.
All right, we got to see this hat. And I love John. I got to tell you guys, we'd be out at crime scenes and he would break this doggone pipe out. And it was hysterical because he was just always cool, calm, and collective, man. Here he is. This is John. 100%. There he is. That's John Lamb.
And this is the same style Stetson that Bogey wore in The Big Sleep.
Do you have the picture of you on the cover of Police Magazine? Do you have that?
Yes, I do.
You don't have it handy though, right?
I could email it to you.
No, that's okay. I'll pull it up. And show everybody the next time. And go ahead.
So
what were you going to say?
The Stetson.
Yeah, no, you're the real deal, man. The real deal. Let's see here. Candace has the means to blah, blah, blah. Defense prosecutor. Yep, she does. And, we're just saying, just wait, let's wait. Let's see what the evidence in totality shows. And, the interesting thing, again, Karen and I were right there. I mean, we were right there. We did a whole show on it. There's a whole in the playlist on, Charlie Kirk. So, John, it's Easter. He has risen. Have you ever thought about the officer who put the handcuffs on Jesus? Not literally, but who?
No, I know what you're talking about. The Sanhedrin guards who took him into custody.
Yeah.
And then eventually turned him over to Roman authorities.
Wonder what that was like. What did that feel like? I bet.
I can't really put myself in that place because you just don't know. You don't know. But or to have been a part of the crucifixion detail and with the Roman legionnaires. So.
Yeah, and happy Passover too, JBZ.
Yes, absolutely.
All of our Jewish friends out there, happy Passover. I've often thought about that, I wonder what that felt like. And so that's why we always stand next to people and let the evidence take it to where it takes us. And so with that, John, thank you so much for being with me tonight. I think this was a very productive show. Hopefully you folks, our folks out there will pass this around and share it, and we'll go from there. What do you think? Wasn't Charlie wearing a plate? I don't know. I don't think he was.
You can't tell. And again, we're back in the area. We just don't know. And I think if people were more comfortable saying, I don't know, and I might be wrong, maybe the world might be a better place. So, Chris, thank you for having me here. It's always a delight.
There's fake monk.
I can't argue with that.
Yeah, and never underestimate experience. Even in your job, whatever you do, it looks like you're standing there with a cane at a. So, never underestimate experience. You know, there's an old saying that no man got to the top of the mountain by falling there. And we used to interview folks all the time, and we still do. And by the way, I still work for the record. I still investigate murders for the record. So I have good genes. But I got a question for you. Would you rather have John and I at Nancy Guthrie's porch, or a guy who's never investigated a murder? Asking for the victims. Asking for the victims. So that said, you know, John, again, thank you so much. You're awesome. We sure do appreciate you. And I'll see you.
Thank you to the mods. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. Your subscribers, your viewers are wonderful. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely, Johnny. Thank you so much. Well, there he goes, Mr. John Lamb, world famous John Lamb. He's absolutely an amazing human being. Let's drive his book through the roof. If you guys would help us out. And then if you wouldn't mind sharing again this on all of your social media networks, we would be forever grateful. And also, thank you all for being here every Sunday and during the week when we're up, when Karen and I are running this with a panel or whoever visiting with us. We so appreciate each and every one of you, even when you push back, and I'm glad you let me push back too. Freedom isn't free. There are a lot of veterans out there. Our troops are in harm's way right now. We've got to keep them in our prayers, but they give us the ability to sit here and to, opine on in an opinion. I would have much more respect for celebrities if they were out there doing it. You know, it's kind of like the person that shows up, with stolen valor. They look like an Eagle Scout times 5, and they run into Navy SEALs, and the SEAL who's lost 6 and 7 of his buddies. So, and you go, so what do? Those individuals need respect, and they need to be shown that not only just in our social media circles, but just around the world. And all of these guys and gals that are out there serving us right now, our first responders, our nurses, our doctors, our teachers, believe it or not, they're on the front lines. And this is the type of case that impacted not only our society, but a culture. Whether we agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. We're not red, we're not white, we're not red, we're not blue. We're not a color. God doesn't see in color. Why do we? On this Easter, let's remember that. We are all in this together. every one of us. And so let's just start treating ourselves or treating each other a little bit better, maybe. And maybe try to figure out how to reframe questions rather than insult as a first impulse. I think we'll be better off. And quite frankly, I think we'll have less wars in this world. John, myself, others have seen a lot in our time. And we can do better as human beings. And if you're out there suffering, if you're on the fence, just remember there is somebody that does care about you. I'm one of those people. If you're lonely, and that's why I came up on Easter, because you're out there, whoever you are. And just remember, you're not abandoned. There is humanity. 96% of the world is good. It's that 4% that just makes it look bad. So as we continue to look out for each other and take care of one another, things will get clearer. Aloha, everybody. Thank you for everything. Again, please share this out. Hit that like, subscribe. Forever, we would be grateful. And hopefully we picked up something from each other this evening. Aloha, biakamai. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts. Wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah. Make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away. You and me go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a way.